Zuby, the British rapper who sounds more American than I do, was recently on the podcast of the Lotus Eaters with Carl Benjamin and Calvin Robinson. I've never paid much attention to Zuby, even though he seems like an interesting and talented guy. He's been defending Andrew Tate for years now, and that usually makes me question a person's intelligence or integrity. But I can't really question Zuby's intelligence because he's clearly very smart, and it's hard to question his integrity because he seems like a really good guy. So I don't know, maybe he's just been fed a bunch of terrible information. People aren't perfect. But on the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, Zuby, who's notoriously optimistic, was asked about how positive he can be given the recent trends in the UK.
Edward Longchamp says, Zuby brings the kind of positivity we need to get through these next 5 years of Labour.
Yeah, man.
Well, how positive are you feeling after looking at the way things are going?
If you don't know what's been going on in the UK, I'm not going to explain it here. Just imagine a train filled with circus clowns and explosives flying off the rails and crashing into an already burning dumpster fire that was lit by mental patients outside an asylum for the criminally stupid.
Dude, I left the country 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was very bittersweet. It really was. I didn't want to leave kind of on the terms that I did. Yeah. But this was 2021. This was when people like myself who are organic, shall we say, did not want to take a certain something, and we're being massively threatened and saying there might prevent people from traveling and stop people. Then I was like, all right, I guess I got to leave now.
Zuby was born in the UK. His family spent some time in Saudi Arabia when he was young. He graduated from Oxford University, but he decided to leave a few years ago because he saw where things were heading. Off the rails.
So yeah, I love the UK in many ways, and I've got lots of people here I love, but the country is really on a bad trajectory.
I know.
It gives me no joy saying that. Like, I'm an optimist by nature.
Yeah, I know.
And I will say that I don't think things are as bad as they may look on social media, but things are not trending in a positive way.
None of the signs are good.
Always pay attention to the trajectory. If your country is worse this year than it was last year, and if it was worse last year than it was the year before, and if it was worse the year before than 5 years ago, and worse 5 years ago than 10 years ago, where do you think it's going to be next year? And the year after? And the year after? And 20 years in the future?
People are I spend a lot of time in the US, and Americans are very concerned about the US, as is the rest of the world. But I think that maybe just because of the size and scale and wealth and variety of the nation, they're a bit more anti-fragile.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, it's kind of like, if crap goes down, it really goes down, right? There's no Texas you can move to, or Florida, or right. It's in the States. It's like, okay, California might get messed up, but you can bounce without leaving the whole nation. You've got 49 other options. Whereas here, it's kind of like,
fair point. The U.S. is big enough and politically and economically diverse enough that if you don't like the trend in one area, you can move to another area. The UK is like that to some extent. There are better and worse areas, but because it's so much smaller, the better areas can be swallowed up much more rapidly. Now for an extremely important question and an absolutely correct answer.
How do you think things can turn around?
do you want me to give you the most honest answer?
Yeah.
Go on.
Return to Christ, man.
Oh, man.
Return to Christ in tradition. People need the faith.
Say what you want about Christianity, but for 2,000 years of Christianity, the trend was to keep improving. No matter what problems there were, no matter what disagreements or wars there were, people kept making societies better. At any point, you could look around and see all kinds of troubles. But 50 years later, things would be better. 50 years after that, things would be better still. Genuine progress was somehow built into the system. Then, in our lifetimes, it became super cool to turn away from Christianity. Everyone instantly went totally insane, and Western civilization started crumbling from within.
People are here, whether they're consider themselves Christian or not. I saw, Richard Dawkins a few weeks ago. You saw that viral clip where he was complaining about the, churches and cathedrals, some being turned into mosques or being turned into whatever, and this, and he just, I quite like cathedrals and this. It's like, bro, you spent your entire career.
Yeah.
He spent his entire career under the delusion that if he could just convince millions of people to turn away from Christianity, society would become more rational, more scientific, more virtuous. How's that working out for everyone?
You spent your entire career there's no vacuum.
Yeah.
Again, there's no power. Something will replace this. You're not going to just whip out people's religiosity and they just believe in nothing. No, they'll believe in the state. They'll believe in politics. They'll believe in leftism, feminism, whatever ism or schism. But it's not going to be neutral. And I think more and more people are starting to wake up to that. But on the deepest level, I think that's what would be needed.
Yeah.
Get rid of Christianity and something will replace it. Contrary to the delusions of the new atheists, it won't be science. It will be an endless array of ideological time bombs. But Zuby has a question for Carl and Calvin.
Can I ask you guys both a question?
Yeah, of course.
And this is maybe you haven't thought about this before, and I'm not even trying to urge you in either direction. I'm just curious as to what your line is. What would it take for you to leave the UK? How bad would it have to get for you to be like, you know what, I'm taking myself and my family and we're going to go somewhere else? How bad would it have to be?
How bad has Great Britain become that the question among British people now is, at what point do we consider the entire nation a lost cause and just leave? We get two answers, which are the two main answers that could be given.
I mean, for me personally, it would have to be a direct threat to my children, but then I would probably send them somewhere else because I'd want to stay myself and try and fix the problem.
Okay.
Carl Benjamin will continue fighting for Great Britain no matter what. He'll make sure his children are someplace safe, but whatever happens, he's not leaving.
I haven't talked about it publicly yet, but I am going to leave. I'll talk about it properly on my Common Sense Crusade at 3 p.m. But yes, I am going to leave the UK.
Wow.
I love this country, but I don't feel safe here anymore.
Calvin Robinson is already leaving. He no longer feels safe in his own country. And he means he doesn't even feel safe from the government. In another part of the discussion, he says that when he got off the plane after a trip not long ago, he was concerned that police were going to arrest him at the airport for something he might have said on social media. Who wants to live in a country where your own government puts a target on your back? I know there are lots of people who would agree with Carl Benjamin here, and others would agree with Calvin Robinson. I say they're both right. It just depends on what you're really after. There are people who need to fight for their country no matter what happens. And there are people who need to say, here's what I want to accomplish in my life, and I don't think I can accomplish it here, so I'm leaving. That's what Zuby did. But whether you're on team stay and fight or on team get out while you can, there's one thing that anyone with a drop of common sense can agree on. Unless there's a massive Christian revival in Great Britain, Americans are going to have to start making room for a lot more pilgrims.